Herman, you were with the Chicago Police Department from 1960 to 1964. Then you joined the faculty at the University of Wisconsin Law School. We'll talk more about your teaching experience in a minute. But in 1965, President Lyndon Johnson appointed the President's Crime Commission and issued its reports in 1967. You were involved in that. You were author of part of the Crime Commission's report on the police, very important document, and in particular Chapter 2 on the role of the police. Can you tell us about that?
Well, this came on the heels of the Bar Foundation study, and very fresh in our mind at the time. When I say our, I mean my colleague at the University of Wisconsin was Frank Remington, who had been field director of research for the Bar Foundation. And so when we were asked by the staff of the commission, what direction they should go, we argued strongly for building on the work of the Bar Foundation study, and especially this discovery that so much of policing was out of view, was not visible. And so they urged us to do what we could to bring that into the study. And that took two forms. And one of the primary efforts is what is reflected in Chapter 2 of the task force report, where we picked up on this discovery of police discretion. And what does one do about that? And at the time, there was many people out there, including the legislature, who were pressing to legislate with regard to police discretion on Miranda and other kinds of issues. And we urged that we could deal with many of the discretionary issues by getting police departments themselves to address those problems. That called for research, it called for them to ask questions of themselves of what they were doing about the use of force, about stopping and questioning and other things, and to come up with policies in the form that would imitate administrative rulemaking as a way of structuring that discretion within the department.
People really take this for granted, that there's a department has a policy on domestic violence, on traffic stops, on use of non-lethal force, and so on. But this was really fairly new.
We examined police manuals in which there wasn't a single word said about many of these issues that we found to be so important in the Bar Foundation studies. They related exclusively to how the uniform was to be worn, and the fact that you can't accept gratuities, and what reports should be filed, etc.
Again, we take this for granted now, but it was something new back then, and it really was based on the Bar Foundation research. What about the Chapter 2 of the task force report regarding the police role?
Well, the two I discovered early on, and that has continued through my career, are very, very much interrelated. Within the larger context of the President's Commission study, there was this concern about what is the role of the police, and should that be refined? And that exploration went in two radically different directions. One was a school of thought which was that the police function has to be refined, and police officers ought to be dealing with crime and conducting serious investigations and divest themselves of all of these other things so that they could do that job more professionally, more thoroughly, etc.
The other things being like low-level disorders.
Yeah, that was relegated, and that was what the commission recommended, a community agent. And that was a person of lower stature, lower qualifications, who was supposed to take care of all that stuff so that real police officers wouldn't have to concentrate on it. That was one school. The other school was that was terribly unrealistic, that the nature of the police function inevitably is going to be one as an emergency response organization that would have to handle a broad range of functions, that these were all interrelated, and even more important, that some of the minor stuff was of greater concern to the public than the major stuff. And so we argued for the broader aspects of the police function, even though that was more ambiguous and more difficult to deal with.
But within the deliberations of the Crime Commission, there was this conflict between this older view of police as crime fighters, and some people just want to make it more efficient, and your emerging view of police as problem solvers.
Right.
How intense was that conflict?
Oh, it was extraordinarily intense, and because the argument was not only are these not separable, but that the qualifications and talent required to deal with the lesser problems may be as great, if not greater, than dealing somewhat mechanically with some of the more traditional crime problems. Moreover, the attitude of the community with regard to their police department depended to a great extent on how the police handled all those minor things. So it was battled out, and I think there was, even though we created the community service agent as a lesser job, that was one of their recommendations, I think the ultimate result was that that was another major change in the paradigm. That is, that there was now greater openness to the awareness that there's a lot out there that we've got to think through and explore. And if that's to be the case, that function consists of a wide range of problems that put down the basis for a lot of our subsequent exploration of specific problems.
I think important there, your point that these low-level problems that people really didn't take seriously, or police departments didn't take seriously, actually require more skill and talent and training on the part of officers than what we think of as the big-time crime, the robbery and so on.
Yes, much more skill and training, but also different kinds of resources. Illustration, at the time, public intoxication. You know, the goal was, let's get somebody else to handle all the intoxicated people so the police will be free of that task. But there was very quickly a realization that the problem just doesn't go away, and that one has to bring a response to bear. And exploration of the public intoxication problem as a problem resulted in bringing new responses to that, which ultimately resulted in the legislative provisions for dealing with the public inebriate as other than an arrest, and bringing that person into a detox center. So that would be an illustration, and that accounted for thousands of cases that police previously were handled. But it didn't mean that police were out of the business. It meant that the police brought to bear a different kind of response based upon the in-depth exploration of that problem.
Right. Police weren't out of the business, but they were thinking about their business differently.
Right.
And that's what ultimately led to your broader concept.
And that public intoxication is different than homicide, this is different from burglary, and calls for this in-depth inquiry and the development of a strategy that is responsive to that particular problem.
The Crime Commission reports came out in 1967, an enormous influence. I know when I entered criminal justice, this was one of the things I read and learned from it. It eventually has become sort of the conventional wisdom, but it was a new and very radical idea at the time. There in the mid-60s.
Well, and I think one of the reasons we're focusing on it here is that over a period of time, it really emerged as a benchmark. You know, it changed attitudes a great deal, and it advanced enormously some of the fundamental avenues of progress within police departments, as, for example, the recruitment of college-trained individuals into policing.